The very strong prejudice against religious ethics in certain circles in the West, which have now become concerned with the environmental crisis, is itself one of the greatest impediments to the solution of the environmental crisis itself. The Earth, as our shared home, serves as a space and source of life for all creations, both living beings and non-living entities. Imagine a world where forests exist only in memories, rivers no longer flow clear, and the air we breathe grows heavier with pollution. We are not merely witnesses to this destruction. We are both its cause and its last hope for salvation. Every fallen tree, every polluted ocean, is the earth crying out for our compassion. If we continue to turn a blind eye, our descendants will inherit a barren world filled with regret. But it is not too late. We can still change, still care for, and restore this planet. Start with small steps. For every step toward awareness is a step toward hope. The modern world is like a double-edged sword. On one side, it brings astonishing new wonders, but on the other, it also causes destruction. Modern humans are beings who have become detached from their sense of awe toward nature, transforming their deep participation in cosmic processes into a state of disengagement. The living nature has been eliminated through desanctification, followed by the separation of social institutions from religious symbols through secularization. As a result, humans no longer inhabit a symbolic socio-religious space.
According to Seyyed Hossein Nasr, modern humans are not only characterized by a positivistic mindset that denies symbolic reality and higher spiritual order, but they also tend to exploit nature excessively without considering its balance.
Examples include the relentless extraction of oil and gas for energy needs, large-scale deforestation, and illegal logging for development purposes. This situation is further exacerbated by human dependence on technology for convenience, leading to increased pollution, the depletion of the ozone layer, and ultimately, global warming. Nasr describes modern humans as Promethean beings. In Nasr's view, the defining characteristic of a Promethean person is the denial of God's existence. They are non-religious both in thought and action. They think only of their own immediate worldly gains, driven by selfishness. Promethean humans always dismiss religious understandings of nature, declaring them as superstition. Nasr repeatedly emphasizes that the modern scientific worldview has created and fostered this type of human throughout the world. Therefore, Nasr strongly criticizes the modern scientific worldview for fostering such a mentality in human minds. Modern human civilization today fails to align with the harmony of nature. Therefore, the world requires a new injection of wisdom at all levels. Philosophy, in this context, must develop ecological wisdom to support the continuity of both the nature and human civilization. Environmental-friendly philosophical values are expected to prepare us to face and eventually address this ecological crisis. In this regard, we need a philosophy of survival that supports a philosophy of action. Through philosophy, humans should focus on how to act today and think about tomorrow. However, the philosophy we need is no longer one that places nature in an inferior position, making humans feel arrogant and superior. Instead, we need a philosophy in its original sense, one that allows humans to experience wisdom, not just in relation to themselves, but toward and within nature.
In this video, we will explore the philosophy of Seyyed Hossein Nasr, particularly his thoughts on the ecological crisis. Please like and share this video in order to reach as many viewers as possible for the good of the future of nature and humanity together. You can also support this small channel monetarily via PayPal or Patreon. Thank you so much for all of you who have supported this channel monetarily. I can't thank you enough.
Modernity has given rise to a materialistic and hedonistic way of life within the framework of humanist doctrine. The logical consequence of this thinking is that humans are seen as the ultimate controllers of reality. According to Nasr, such a perspective distorts the deepest essence of human nature. For him, true human identity lies in the relationship between humans and the transcendent realm beyond themselves. Therefore, if we seek to cultivate the vital spirit of life, we must begin with this sacred assumption. Nasr sees the ecological crisis affecting the Western world as a consequence of spiritual drought. Put simply, environmental destruction is a manifestation of human arrogance toward nature. According to Nasr, the current environmental degradation is inseparable from a crisis of religiosity and spirituality, which has disrupted the balance of ecosystems. Forests that should serve as habitats for animals are being cleared in the name of human settlement expansion, threatening the survival of wildlife. The burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and large-scale waste production have led to climate change, species extinction, and environmental degradation on an unprecedented scale.
The spiritual and religious crisis stems from the neglect of perennial truth. While environmental activism is undeniably crucial in addressing this crisis, a deeper issue lies at the core of modern human existence.
Quote, "The moving force for those movements remains, however, by and large purely external. For a humanity turned towards outwardness by the very processes of modernization, it is not so easy to see that the blight wrought upon the environment is in reality an externalization of the destitution of the inner state of the soul of that humanity whose actions are responsible for the ecological crisis. Consequently, overbearing summer heat, drought, and dying seals have to remind us that all is not well in that earthly abode for whose sake modern man forwent his quest for heaven, and which he is now destroying with unprecedented ferocity. The Industrial Revolution has ushered us into an era that geologists refer to as the Anthropocene, a time when human activity has become the dominant force shaping and transforming the Earth system. It is undeniable that anthropocentric reasoning is one of the primary causes of the environmental crisis.
Anthropocentrism is a view that considers humans as the center of the ecosystem. Adherents of this perspective believe that the highest and most determining value within the ecosystem is humanity and its interests.
Consequently, everything beyond the human realm is only deemed valuable if it serves human purposes, lacking inherent worth of its own. As a result, nature is perceived merely as an object, a tool, and a means to fulfill human needs. Long ago, Nasr warned us about human arrogance toward nature. In his 1968 work, Man and Nature, he clearly stated, quote, "We are, needless to say, not opposed to better care of the planet through the use of wiser means of production, transportation, etc., than those which exist today. But such feats of science and engineering alone will not solve the problem. There is no choice but to answer these and similar questions, and to bring to the fore the spiritual dimension and the historical roots of the ecological crisis which many refuse to take into consideration to this day." Nasr expresses deep regret over the estrangement of modern humans from their spiritual contemplation, as they dismiss such connections as mere superstitions or remnants of an outdated way of life. He sees this shift from a spiritually profound perspective to a secular mindset as a self-destructive course for human civilization. Throughout his works, Nasr repeatedly refers to this condition as the spiritual crisis of modern humanity. In his view, only the sacred worldview upheld by traditional religions can offer a path to salvation from this widespread crisis. Nasr asserts that the relationship between God, humanity, and nature follows a hierarchical structure found across religious and cultural traditions. However, secular environmentalists criticize this model, arguing that it places humans at the center while devaluing other beings. Nasr rejects this criticism, emphasizing that such a hierarchy is not a license for environmental exploitation, but rather a framework that designates humans as responsible stewards accountable to God. He argues that the modern scientific worldview, which severs the connection between God and humanity as well as between humanity and nature, has fostered an anthropocentric mentality that harms the environment. For Nasr, traditional religions uphold the sacred triadic relationship between God, humanity, and nature, in contrast to the modern scientific perspective, which focuses solely on human interactions and ultimately fails to maintain ecological balance.
According to Nasr, the path to averting this environmental catastrophe lies in rekindling humanity's fractured bond with God and nature.
In this regard, he regards Eastern religious and cultural traditions, such as Hinduism, Taoism, Islam, Confucianism, the Eastern branch of Christianity, and Buddhism, as vital sources of wisdom for restoring a deep and harmonious connection between humans and the natural world. Quote, "The Oriental traditions emphasize on the hierarchic nature of reality, the predominance of the spiritual over the material, the sacred character of the cosmos, the inseparability of man's destiny from that of natural and cosmic environment, and the unity of knowledge and the interpretations of all things." These teachings of the Oriental traditions comprise the metaphysical aspects of Oriental cultures. Eastern spiritual traditions, such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Islamic mysticism, Sufism, view reality as hierarchical. This hierarchy does not signify separation, but rather levels within an interconnected unity. The physical world is not seen as separate from spirituality, but as part of a larger divine reality. In Vedanta, for example, the material world, Prakriti, is below the highest consciousness, Brahman, but this world is not pure illusion. It holds meaning in the spiritual journey of humanity. In Taoism, the Tao, cosmic way, permeates all aspects of existence, including nature, so humans must live in harmony with the Tao, not dominate it. The spiritual priority over the material in Eastern traditions does not imply the devaluation of nature, but rather views nature as a manifestation or reflection of divine principles. In Buddhism, the teaching of interdependence, pratityasamutpada, shows that all living beings are interdependent, including humans and nature.
In Islam, the concept of fitrah, original purity, states that nature has its own awareness of God. Therefore, humans must not exploit nature, as it is part of the sacred cosmic order.
Eastern traditions view the cosmos as sacred, not just as inert matter to be manipulated. In Hinduism, mountains, rivers, and forests are often seen as manifestations of deities or dwelling places of sacred spirits. For instance, the Ganges River is not merely a water source, but also a mother that purifies the soul. In Shinto in Japan, kami, divine spirits, are believed to reside in elements of nature like trees and stones. In spiritual traditions, human destiny cannot be separated from the natural and cosmic environment. This contrasts sharply with the modern Western view, which tends to separate humans as subjects and nature as an object. In Taoist teachings, humans are part of Tian, heaven, and Di, earth, and must follow the principle of Wu Wei, acting without resisting the flow of nature. In Sufi culture, humans are considered microcosms that reflect the macrocosm, meaning that any damage done to nature also reflects spiritual harm in humans. Eastern spiritual traditions do not separate science from spiritual and cosmic values. In Islamic philosophy, the concept of hikmah, wisdom, encompasses knowledge of nature, ethics, and divinity as an inseparable unity. In Mahayana Buddhism, deep understanding of reality, prajna, is not only intellectual, but also involves intuitive awareness and ethics in harmony with nature.
Unlike the hierarchy of Western thought often associated with human domination over nature, the hierarchy in Eastern traditions teaches balance and responsibility. This hierarchy is not about placing humans as rulers of nature, but as guardians with a sacred duty to care for it.
In this way, Eastern spiritual traditions maintain a close relationship with nature, as it is viewed as an integral part of the broader spiritual reality. Quote, "We must realize that the traditional religious wisdom applies to us as much as it did to our remote ancestors, and that humanity must be seen, as it once was, as an inseparable part of the natural world, as God's creation and subject to the same divinely ordained laws that must be observed if we are to maintain its fundamental order." In Islam, the concept of Tawheed, the oneness of God, teaches that the whole cosmos is a sign of God, ayat, and therefore humans must treat it with respect and responsibility. Consequently, the exploitation of nature is seen as a betrayal of the trust God has placed in humans as his vicegerents on earth. In other words, Muslims are taught that as beings created by God, who enjoy a special dignity and honor among all other creatures, humans have a specific role as stewardship, responsible for managing the nature and environment. The whole cosmos is a trust given by God to humanity. In this respect, the nature even serves as a school for humans, and God will reward each person according to their good intentions, ethics, and efforts toward the nature. With this trust, humans are responsible for the fulfillment of God's plans, the sustainability, and order of the nature, including processes such as evolution and growth, regularity and organization, as well as beauty and preservation. By integrating the core teachings of world religions, Nasr asserts that religious perspectives inherently support ecological consciousness. Unlike the modern scientific worldview, which perceives nature as separate and lifeless, religious traditions regard it as a living entity infused with spiritual significance. Moreover, these traditions link nature to angels, spirits, and souls, emphasizing its sacred dimension. For Nasr, if humanity embraces this deeper understanding of nature, the mechanistic and materialistic scientific perspective becomes untenable. In contrast to the secular view that reduces nature to mere resources, Nasr advocates for a religious worldview that fosters environmental sustainability. Nasr maintains that human consciousness must be properly awakened so as to create harmony among all living beings and fostering a balanced ecosystem between them. Here, Nasr is hinting at the need for a heightened spiritual awareness that leads to the level of stewardship over nature and all creatures. Quote, "Everyone talks today of the danger of war, overpopulation, or the pollution of air and water, but usually the same people who discern these obvious problems speak of the necessity of further development, or war against human misery, stemming from conditions imposed by terrestrial existence itself. In other words, they wish to remove the problems brought about by the destruction of the equilibrium between man and nature through further conquest and domination of nature." Few would be willing to admit that the acutest social and technical problems facing mankind today come not from so-called underdevelopment, but from overdevelopment.
Indeed, we realize that modern humans frequently discuss ecological crises, yet they avoid confronting the very issues that contribute to planetary destruction. Of course, this contradiction is a fundamental dilemma rooted in the absence of our spiritual awareness toward the environment.
For Nasr, humans share an intrinsic bond with every element of the natural world, but this connection has been lost. Unless a deep spiritual reverence for nature is rekindled in the human heart, the ecological crisis will persist. Quote, "Few are willing to look reality in the face and accept the fact that there is no peace possible in human society as long as the attitude toward nature and the whole natural environment is one based on aggression and war." Furthermore, perhaps not all realize that in order to gain this peace with nature, there must be peace with the spiritual order. To be at peace with the earth, one must be at peace with heaven.
To be at peace with the earth, one must be at peace with heaven. Thank you so much for watching. My special thanks goes to Team Arus. See you.